I would gravitate to picking up the laptop and I tried to manufacture sales. I would do an incredible amount of busy work, repolishing the CRM, sending out more email blasts or LinkedIn messages, calling people. I would create undue stress that I had to send the follow-up email and maybe skip dinner with the family because they need to have that email within 5 minutes after that discovery call.
I spent close to 12 to 16 hours per day in front of a computer, just typing and doing nothing. Like, and looking back now when I have a kid and I'm looking at the baby and I'm like, listen, I have 1 hour. She's crying. You know, I have this email to send out. What's worth it? I have a decision to make. And I've actually made the decision that, you know what, my daughter is actually more important than this email. It can wait.
Welcome to Outsource to Profits. I have a fantastic guest. Johnathan, do you mind taking a moment? Who are you? Who do you serve? And how do you help the world?
First and foremost, thank you, Jamie. I am a father first and foremost. Then secondly, I am an entrepreneur and one of the co-founders of Penji, which is an on-demand graphic design subscription and creative subscription service. We service agencies and marketing teams all across the world. And it's probably been my life's Mona Lisa, I'd say. And I'm excited to be joining this podcast and this journey with you today.
Fantastic. Anybody that answers the question with they're a father first, you've got to listen to a podcast, Front Row Dads. I was introduced to it a couple of years ago. It's essentially business owner dads who are dads first, business owner second. Incredible podcast.
I love it.
I'll tell a quick story around where we're going with this. So over the years, I've owned 3 agencies, and you have incredible amounts of stress as a business owner that the average person doesn't realize actually exists, because your world that you could tell these stories to is really myopic and small. And so you hold the burden of payroll and taxes and lawsuits and customer challenges and investors and all this sort of stuff. And for me, my stress would manifest in this like very distinct order of operations that I started to notice. One, and we were talking about this with our fellow podcast member that we were just talking with, obviously my drinking would go up. Number 2, I would start to develop back pain and eventually would turn into a sciatic pinch. I would have bad sleeps that would pile up for a couple of days. Then I would have a sciatic pinch in my back. And if I let that sciatic pinch last for more than 48 hours, I would then get the cold or flu. Like, it was so repeatable. And we'll talk about this in the podcast. I started to develop remedies or solutions to be able to not only predict that this was coming, but then kind of relieve myself of these tensions before they manifested. So with those, do you mind sharing, you were just talking about before we started recording that you're yourself as a new father, a founder, stresses start to build up. What are some of your warning signs, triggers, or things that you start, maybe they're physical manifestations, or maybe they're mental, where, you know, it starts affecting, and it's a lot of it's due to time. That's what this episode's about. So maybe talk about your challenges that you see.
So one of my favorite TV shows is called Ted Lasso. And I never was able to like really understand what my anxiety and stress is like until I actually watched the episode where they artistically depicted what anxiety and stress is, which is a moment of like, you know, I guess like a silence of some sorts, like a white noise that's going on in your back of your head, and you're kind of just like dazed in a way. And you sit down and you don't know what the hell's going on, but then you just like, and all of a sudden just wake up from whatever that moment is. And if I could be completely, I'm a very honest and transparent person.
Me too. Yeah.
I have absolutely nothing to hide. And I'm not taking anything with me when I hit the grave. So I might as well just let it all out and be as honest and transparent as I can. So with that said, you know, I never related more to that moment. And I feel like as a father, I've had a lot of those moments recently. But the positive in all this is I'm 36 now, and I started this chapter on of entrepreneurship when I was 23. I've never had a real job. This is the only thing I've ever known, truly, and I've always found a way to figure it out. I spent close to 12 to 16 hours per day in front of a computer just typing and doing nothing. Like, and looking back now when I have a kid and I'm looking at the baby and I'm like, listen, I have 1 hour. She's crying. You know, I have this email to send out. What's worth it? I have a decision to make. And I've actually made the decision that, you know what, my daughter is actually more important than this email. It can wait. And I've had this revelation within the past couple of 6 months or so where I'm like, all that time that I spent wasting of hours of just in front of a computer because it gave me comfort to do that. The things that I know now, I wish that I was able to kind of see it, but I respect the experience that I had in the past that led me to that epiphany that I have today.
This is so important. I have something similar. I've spent my entire life as a founder,
Yeah.
but as the revenue generating founder. So I am.
I'm same.
Yeah, founder led sales. Just recent in my first agency, I call it getting half pregnant. I had I had a bit of a sales team, and in this agency, Get Leverage, we're actually going full scale. What I learned about myself is, and what I would coach a younger version of myself, is that I would gravitate to picking up the laptop and I tried to manufacture sales. I would do an incredible amount of busy work, repolishing the CRM, sending out more email blasts or LinkedIn messages, calling people. I would create an undue stress that I had to, like, imagine I dropped off a demo or discovery call. I had to send the follow-up email and maybe skip dinner with the family because they need to have that email within 5 minutes after that discovery call, because otherwise that prospect will forget about me and it won't follow its natural sales velocity. What I've come to realize is that you very rarely can manufacture a deal to fall outside of its natural course of evolution. You can influence a little bit of the details. You can pull the buying committee together and you can make but at the end of the day, a deal's going to happen its natural way or it's not. You're just there to facilitate the conversation along the journey. And I waste so much time until the last few years manufacturing something that doesn't really exist. And so I know exactly what that means. And so what has that meant for you from a physical or mental manifestation? And then maybe we'll then flip it to time management. Like, what are you doing about it?
Yeah. You know, I think now I'm realizing that when you hire people, they need to be able to do the job. And I think the reason why that I originally, and I still am, I'm not the best, right? But I'm definitely better than what I was. When you hire somebody to do a job, they should do that job. And you should more or less be as hands-off as possible as you can and let them figure it out, right? And eventually they will, or they won't. And if they don't, then they leave your company. But if they do, then they prosper. And I've really found a way to kind of say, listen, this is your domain. This is your ownership. If you need help, I'm here to help you. But at the end of the day, like, you're hired to perform a particular set of actions and you have to be able to make that better. And I think it's taken a long time for me to figure that out because I've never fully trusted them because I was always a bad leader myself. Because if I set the proper measures in place and I give the coaching and I give the training and I constantly communicate with them with follow-up calls or follow-up meetings, check-ins, whatever it is, like, that's all you really need to do when it comes to like a good leader, right? And I think if you let them have that creative freedom, they'll have more confidence and ownership of whatever task that you provide. But it took me years in order to figure out that, holy crap, like, I'm the one that's stopping the growth from happening. and I'm the one that is in the way. Because when people, when you talk to like a founder, right, or when you talk to like a manager, there's a level of respect and ownership that you have as that person that's driving, that's the leading force of the company culture, of the sales, or whatever it may be. But if you could just kind of remove yourself away, I mean, I think that's where like true growth, from a personal standpoint and also from a business standpoint, I think that's where growth happens.
And are you finding this is me almost speaking back to myself? I have you and I believe follow Dan Martell, and he's got this thing called the replacement ladder, and there are time management cues you should be replacing, from basic administration up to customer support tickets, then to marketing, and then to sales. I'm going to guess one of the more difficult for you, because it is for me, is relinquishing myself from the sales conversation, because it is my comfort zone. It is my super skill. And I've been able to scale. I look at all the other departments: finance department, HR. I've got 3 people in HR, and a whole finance department, and customer service and delivery. But the part that I struggle with is like holding on to the sales component of it, because
Yeah.
it's my super skill. What have you found has been the part that you have most difficulty relinquishing? And then how are you then trying to solve for that?
Yeah, I mean, so I say sales is probably number two, believe it or not. The number one is actually the customer experience. So like, fortunately for us, our product and our service kind of sells itself, right? You do need a little bit more of a push, and that's dependent on the person. We've become a very numbers driven company. So if I wanted to look at like, what are my success rates at sales versus, because I did all the sales for probably 5, 6, 7 years of the business. And then it wasn't up until 2-ish years or so ago that we actually started to hire sales people, where they have measurable KPIs and things like that. But my metrics of sales was like a conversion rate of like almost 60-70%, right? So then when you go down to a salesperson and they're sitting at 35, 40, whatever that number is, your first reaction is like, damn, man, like, if I just, like, what could have been if I were to do this, right? So that's number one when it comes to sales.
That's the hardest part. Is
Oh
like
gosh, yeah.
my conversion. We close 40 to 45% of every SQL.
Yeah.
And my biggest fear is when that does naturally drop to 28 or 30 or whatever it is. But I have to always remind myself 80% done by others is 100% better than done by yourself.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I agree solely with that. But I actually think the thing that provides me that anxiety and stress is the customer experience, because in our industry specifically, it's like, okay, how do we make you feel, right? Finding a graphic designer, finding creative, like, you're in the world too. How do you make that person feel comfortable when they come into your home, right? And that is key. I think the sales aspects is important, right? I'm not going to dilute it, but I think when they step into your home and they become a customer and they paid you, I think that, because that experience is a little bit more unique, because now this person is talking to you about their baby, right? Like, this person gave you the money, right? So now you have to treat their baby with respect. And if you don't, it's very quick for them to just leave the service, right?
Yeah, it was not I knew that about myself even 15 years ago. It was a part, I wouldn't say I disdained it. It was a part I wasn't good at. I wasn't good at the empathy of, maybe the customer, like why the customer might have had excuses why we weren't coming together, or where there was communication gaps. I understood it and I could coach our team. Fortunate or unfortunately, had to build up organizations where I had to build up customer success and support instantly around me, because it would have been a failed state if I had done it. Yeah.
But do you find, I'm curious to hear your answer on this. Do you feel like, because we hire very similarly, right?
Yeah.
So culture is unique, right? And have you experienced it being a little bit more difficult to kind of coach empathy based on the culture of where the background of the person that is in that position?
So we have and just for context, anybody listening, both of us are huge proponents of offshore talent. So we have an East meets West for every customer. So
Yeah.
there is a North American account manager. That North American account manager is thinking about the commercial health of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And on that same call, there is a project manager who lives in Dhaka, Bangladesh, who's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the service delivery. And then there's those that actually do the service delivery.
Yep.
So
Very similar setup, by the way.
yeah, so we have a yin and a yang on the call that actually help juxtapose if the conversation is moving one way, the North American or the Bangladeshi can pull that conversation based on where they need to. If it is skewed to one or the other, then there can be a challenge because it's either, well, that's the North American perspective, but you, the North American, aren't doing the work, or the opposite. Thank you for your insights from Bangladesh, but this is how we think in North America. So we bring both onto every call.
Yeah. And I would say similarly in that aspect to us too, what I found is that a lot of times, and this is just the way I'm trying to run our team, is I want people to communicate like they're your best friend, right? Yeah. So instead of saying hello, sir, right, which is relatively common in most cultures. Yeah. Which, you know, is cool. I don't particularly like being called sir. The first thing is when they say sir, I'm like, my name's Johnathan. No, sir, we're good.
You're 36. I'm 46. My name's not Mr. Shanks.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But I will say, you know, a lot of times offshore talent or a lot of times different cultures, they have that formality aspects. And I think what's been really fun on our business is shaking out the formalities, right? And I always try to say to them, like, listen, read this sentence. You just sent this to a customer. Read this out loud. Would you ever say that to your boyfriend or girlfriend? And they're like, no. Well, then don't send it to an effing customer. Like straight up, don't do it.
Yeah, 100%. And yes, we, and we'll come back in a second back to the time management piece, but we run we have 3 people in HR that we run an incredible amount of training and enablement. We have something called Mastery Monday where the entire organization has to come together and they're learning whether it's a hard skill like becoming certified on Sixth Sense and or a soft skill where we're talking about, as an example, asking what or how based questions so we can draw out opportunities for upsell and cross sell. The amount of time, money, and energy we spend on enablement, because to your point, what we see with offshore talent is all the hard skills are typically there. Like the ability to do graphic design is incredible, but the soft skill of asking the right questions to draw out a customer's what's in their head to becoming what's going to go on page, or soft skills of how to show up to a call and run a very effective call.
Yep,
those have to be taught.
Yeah.
A quick question for you, coming back to time management. What have you started implementing for yourself and you would recommend for fellow founders listening to the call? What has been some of the hacks that have completely changed your insurance? It's not a guarantee, but you are preventing those sicknesses or illnesses or anxieties that we were talking about at the beginning of the call.
Yeah. 3 things: Trello, Notion, Calendar. And these are all super basic. You probably have heard it a million times.
We use the exact same 3.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, that's even better. And you know, like, I think like when you go on listen to podcasts, a lot of people say the same things, but I probably will be a part of that more or less problem. But I think just the way that you think about it, I think is probably going to be a little bit different. So I used to train all of our team members using Google Sheets, and I would have like how-to guides and all this crap. Like I would just fill junk, and that honestly, going back to time in the very beginning, that's what I spent most of my time on, is like, how can I teach somebody these soft skills? And that took so much of my day in the very beginning. But then I started moving everything to Trello, to Notion.
Into Notion, that's where our SOPs live.
Into Notion, yes. So all of our training and everything like that, documentation is literally in one place. So now I don't have to be like, well, it's in this Google Drive folder, it's in that Google Drive folder. No, it can be, but like for the most part, Notion. So I run my marriage on Notion, believe it or not. Like that's how extensive I am a big fan of Notion. Then Trello, I focus the team to focus on three things, right? What are the most three important things? And they actually send that via Slack every single day. And then I go, listen, I'm going to push you a little bit. I don't think this is that important, right? I need you to focus on, particularly this instead, or I need you to reconsider this because I don't think that's as important as you may think it is. So Notion for like home base, Trello for just importance, and then calendar for me in particular is like, okay, especially with a newborn for the most part, or toddler, like you have to live by your schedule. So I block everything out. Like I have 15-minute calls. I do 5-minute calls. Like everything is mapped out to a T. I know exactly what the hell I'm doing as soon as I wake up, and there's nothing that will be thrown into that. And if you don't fit my schedule, sorry, bro, you're not in there.
That has been the biggest change for me of preventing complete burnout, because my comfort is work. Like I love,
Same.
I have buddies who, at 46 are counting down the days they could retire.
Yeah.
I want to own a portfolio of agencies until they put me in a grave.
Hell yeah.
And long and the short is, I have to protect myself from myself. And I do not take outside calls on Fridays. I actually work a 4-day week, and I call it mind versus grind time. And starting Thursday night, my body starts to change. And on Fridays, like I'll go for a water ski in the morning with this group of founders. And that whole day is ideating and thinking and journaling ideas. I write a weekly newsletter to my investors. But by Saturday morning, when I wake up, the amount of intellectual property that I've created over the last 15 years on Saturday morning on the dock is probably 80% of every great idea I've ever had, because my brain has had 24 hours to relax. Idea comes, I'll email it to myself, I'll write it down. And so because I have 3 days of that a week, come Monday, which Monday I don't take outside calls as well. I do internal calls and content creation.
Nice.
It is, calendaring has changed my life. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I'll be honest with your audience. I'm not there yet. I know I can be, and I know I will be, but mentally it's every time, I think of life as seasons, and the season that I'm in right now is caring for my daughter. Right. Yeah. And that's like, I'm in survival mode, and I'm very comfortable knowing that. I'm very comfortable talking about that, but I know that I'm very close to all those things. And the mental clarity piece is for sure something that I strive for. But I would say at most, I'm probably like maybe 3 months away from that. Yeah. And I'm okay with it. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to being a founder, is being okay.
That. Yeah. And here's the thing is, it's an evolution. Like all 1 year from now, look back at my daily, weekly routine now and be like, oh, that was garbage.
Sucks.
You should see my new one.
Sure.
It's just a constant evolution.
I agree.
It all comes. This was fantastic. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about your business?
I'm pretty open. I would love for you to email me if you find any value in what I'm saying, or if you want to roast me, like we talked to your last, we were talking to your friend. You could roast me too. It's Johnathan, Johnathan at Penji.co. If you find any value in our story, in my story, I run a podcast called Dear Dads about my journey of being a dad. Never thought I was going to be one. Grateful that I am. And Penji is the company, penji.co.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on Offshore to Profit.